Conference February event hosted by the HealthTech Networking Club. I'm Lindsey Williams, founder of Corylus Consulting and co-founder of MyUTI, and will be your moderator for this panel discussion. The monthly HealthTech Rapid Conference events are organized by the HealthTech Networking Club, an exclusive networking club that brings together influential members of the HealthTech community. If you'd like more information on the monthly HealthTech Rapid Conference events or the HealthTech Networking Club, please head to the Bene Studio website. To all our members, if you haven't already, we urge you to leave a comment in the general Slack space about our topic of the month for the chance to contribute to the HealthTech Guide. More details are available in Slack. The link to the Slack channel can be found in the Zoom chat box. Please leave any feedback or comments on the panel discussion in the general chat on Slack. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. We have a phenomenal panel today. I'm going to allow everyone to do about a 2-minute introduction to give you a background, and then we're going to really dive into this topic of working with Big Pharma. And I know it's obviously a huge thing for innovative companies for a lot of different reasons. So I really look forward to this discussion today. I'm going to start with Balint. Will you please introduce yourself, give a quick 2-minute intro, and then we will go to Rahul.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Balint Bene. I'm the CEO of Bene Studio, and Bene Studio is a digital product consultancy. We have a special focus on health tech, and we've delivered more than 100 successful projects, both for enterprises and for startups. And into this panel, I would like to bring this experience, mainly the startup aspects, the IT vendor aspects, and the user experience aspects, how to work with pharma as a health tech startup or any health tech company.
Awesome, thank you. Rahul, will you do a quick introduction?
Yeah, of course. Hey everyone, I'm Rahul Chaturvedi. I'm the founder and CEO of Clora. Clora is organizing the world's life sciences expertise and providing access to that expertise through software. We're the place to discover, build, and manage on-demand life science teams. We're backed by VCs like Spark Capital and Felicis Ventures, and we're based in downtown Boston. Prior to founding Clora, I was the VP of clinical development at a number of different biotechs, most recently Kaleido Biosciences, which was founded by Flagship Pioneering, and Avidro. Nice to be here.
Thank you. And then Medzi, can we hear from you, please?
So as I introduce myself, my name is Mihaly Medzihradszky, or Medzi for short, and I work for a company called KNIME, which is actually based out of Zurich, Switzerland. Officially, I'm actually based out of Budapest. We've got offices in Berlin and Austin, Texas as well. And we've got satellite people strewn about the place in the line of a truly virtual company, well, partially virtual company. Anyway, we have an open source data science platform called the KNIME platform, and we've been part of, that's a Gartner Leader Quadrant, or up there in that quadrant or around that quadrant, for about 7 years now. We're funded by an evergreen fund based out of Belgium called Innovus. And my background is essentially, I did various things in university, as it tends to happen, but I joined a company called Chemaxon in 2009, which was a cheminformatics company, so really supporting early phase drug discovery, and I've worked in account management and sales leadership roles ever since, almost always working with pharma companies of various sizes and shapes. So my view that I'm really bringing here is, since I've also done some consulting and advice and provided advice to other startups and smaller companies, is really to how start working with pharma, both in how to work with pharma as end users and also how to work with the IT environment. And really similar to what Balint said, a bit of a vendor perspective. Over to you, Lindsey.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And last but certainly not least, Joana, will you do a quick introduction and background for the audience?
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Joana Duran. I introduced myself already, but I'll do it again. For those of you who aren't with us, I am a global medical director at Johnson & Johnson. I oversee global medical development in the oncology franchise for the company. We also have franchises in neurology, infectious diseases, and global health as well. And I also am involved with our J Labs biotech incubator, where we incubate startup companies at various different stages. We also, apart from incubating companies where we actually provide strategic guidance for them and access to all the J&J resources, we also do one-off funding of various different ideas at different stages of development. I personally administer a large grant through J Labs that funds innovation in the hematology oncology space. And sometimes am also involved in reviewing proposals that come through for other areas outside of hematology and oncology. And prior to joining Johnson & Johnson about 2 years ago, I was with a smaller biotech company, a German company that was launching their US business. I was with them for about 7 years, helping to build the scientific side of their business, helping to navigate all of the regulatory approvals, launches, and life cycle management of the existing therapies that they had.
Thank you so much for that. In advanced preparation for this panel, I had a handful of conversations, and really it's such a massive topic to talk about how to work with big pharma or just pharma in general, right? As a health tech innovator or a company. And really we wanted to bucket this conversation into a handful of things. So the first kind of 3 areas or topics that we're going to discuss is going to be really around understanding specifically the traditional models of engaging with pharma and kind of what goes into that, a little bit more of the modern innovative ways, right, to engage with pharma. And then lastly, these kind of high-level brand marketing strategic opportunities and collaborations. And after we kind of cover some of those topics, we will also dive into, most importantly, some key takeaways for the innovators here on the call today around how to even get started with this, you know, some key tips and tricks on how to engage, why to engage, and basically giving you guys some tangible, actionable items to take away from this call today. So one of the first things that we really talked about was understanding kind of what that traditional model from a health tech perspective looks like, right? So Balint, you had some really interesting comments around understanding kind of from a technical perspective, right? Like different software solutions and the framework kind of working with a big pharma company in a more traditional manner. Do you mind sharing with me some of those thoughts again?
Yeah, thanks for asking this aspect. So what I can see from the vendor perspective and from the startups perspective is that there are different levels of cooperation with the pharma. The strongest kind of cooperation can be an IT vendor position when the partner is solving exact tasks, exact needs, and we can see that most of these vendors are focusing on 1-2 specific tasks instead of the whole picture, whole life cycle. And we can understand that the nature of pharma companies are that they have to protect many information. So therefore, vendors mainly can focus on smaller packages of tasks. So this is one aspect. Another aspect is when a startup is in that position that pharma-focused startup can cooperate with a big pharma company. In many cases, they can have an early exit, but in some cases, the startups can't find the right topic, the right value proposition to work together with the pharma enterprise, and in most cases, there are no long time business developments. Either the startup has an actual important topic and they can work together, or that the startup can't really find the cooperation platform with the pharma company. It's an also quite interesting aspect. And the third one is a wider communication, like cooperation between many health tech company startups, like in the wellness sector or focusing on prevention, sports, nutrition. And what I can see is more and more pharma enterprises are focusing not just on the cure of different diseases, but on the communication of health itself, building up a branding, a refreshed brand, which is around health, and to support it, I can see many cooperation opportunities for a diverse set of startups in the whole wellness and prevention area.
Yeah, something you mentioned there about kind of understanding the different silos and how those work and how to engage with pharma. And Medzi, actually, you had a really great kind of real world example of this, of understanding really that, you know, is your solution actually solving for something? And if it's tech-based, right, from a software perspective, understanding the difference between your world of living in tech 24/7 versus the different life cycles of possibly research or clinician development phases, and kind of how that can differ from the actual end user's experience, right?
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. I think what I was referring to is Bene Studio, right, is all about supporting these organizations and tech companies to deliver products. And oftentimes when we deliver products, we tend to focus on things like UX, and obviously when we're pitching something, we focus on ROI. And what I found really peculiar, that there's two peculiarities that I found working with pharma. One was that the tools that we provide to practitioners within pharma can often be something that's actually a relatively small part of their day-to-day work. They're very important, but in terms of the time that they actually spend using those tools, it's a relatively small part. And I know we're going digital, but if you're especially thinking about people in research, they do record pieces of information, but they do spend their time, I don't know, as clinicians, as physicians with patients, or if you're doing other types of more hands-on research, then you're spending time in the lab. And the actual time you're spending with technology is often, or with software from my perspective, right, is relatively a small part of your time. And we tend to think that, so one of the mistakes I've seen companies run into is you tend to pitch a product very much from the tech perspective as if it's going to change the world. And it changes the world a little bit for them. So the added benefit of a small improvement, which you think is huge because it reduces the life cycle of something that they've been doing, I don't know, 20%, is not actually such a large incremental addition to their day-to-day work. And that also coincides with another problem that I found is, especially when you're trying to pitch new solutions, that there tend to be, it depends, if you're one of those technologies that's trying to disrupt, but you do have to answer questions that people have been using other tools to solve, you do have to answer those initial questions or offer alternatives to them before you can actually pitch a new technology. And that's important because we tend to try to present MVPs and really cool things that solve an unmet need, but we don't answer the question that actually lays behind it. And we offer a health-based solution that does it, that the users won't adopt because it's missing the core functionality that they have been relying on previous technologies. And that the reason that's important, in pharma, what I found is adding new tools to an existing set of software is just extremely hard because there's numerous reasons we can go into later on why that's difficult.
Those are good points. And Rahul, you had some really great comments, you know, when we spoke about understanding kind of the complexity and how long it can take to drive adoption, and actually if big pharma is really the right way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think selling into or partnering with pharma often can be a multi-year endeavor, and certainly has its upsides. The challenge for early stage startups is that, you know, time is the enemy, and we don't have the luxury of spending a year just trying to get in with a customer or two, even though there might be outsized returns on the on the other end of that. And so, I just encourage folks to think very clearly about what you're trying to validate with your MVP and who the right user is to validate that, so that you can get answers as quickly as possible, as Medzi was saying. I think when you are actually selling into pharma, important to really have a clear understanding of what and do your homework around what are the potential challenges that a big pharma company may face over the next 5 to 10 years, because that's really the time horizon that matters to them. And craft your value proposition around those challenges with each potential partner that you're looking to work with. And to the point that Lindsey brought up, encourage folks to just look at early stage, high growth biotechs where sales cycles or partnership cycles may be much shorter, and happy to go into that later too.
Thank you. And Joana, from a big pharma perspective, is there any insight you can provide in terms of, maybe what are those clear gaps or opportunities for companies to come in, and then maybe level set our expectations? Is it a multi-year process, potentially for these partnerships with younger innovative companies?
Yeah, we partner a lot with innovators in various different ways. And I'll cover the more traditional ways now, because I think you're going to talk about like some modern ways of partnering later. So I'll save that. But as has been alluded to already, working at anything that helps facilitate the way that we do clinical development is very, very useful. Any type of interfaces, technologies that help us to interface better with clinicians, technologies that help us to execute clinical trials better, technologies that help us to analyze large data sets better are very, very useful for our clinical development. I also think that there's a lot of opportunity for people who are doing, who are developing actual, for example, like testing. If you're working, if you're doing lab work and development in that area, we are definitely always looking to integrate sort of like new, what we call sub-studies into our larger clinical trials, where we can validate or actually further explore the use of sort of early stage laboratory technologies if you're working in that space. That is also very useful to us. And I think that also technologies that are helping to better do remote patient monitoring or assess patient-reported outcomes are very, very useful, because we have a commitment to integrate those types of measures into all of our large clinical studies. And we're always exploring new ways in which we can do that, especially using wireless technology nowadays and various different forms of telemedicine. So if you're working in that tech space, there's a lot of utility for your technologies in our clinical studies as well.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. It kind of reminds me when you're touching on, big data and ways to analyze large data sets. In a conversation Medzi and I had, he quoted kind of a cartoon that they had of, do you mind sharing, Medzi, what that was? It was just too cute.
So there's a little background story here. So we're a data science company, but we like to be the silver voice of data science. So when we hear the word AI, our eyes light up and we put on a questioning smile, because we feel it's heavily overhyped. And one of the big hypes last year, I guess maybe the year before, was deep learning. And whereas it has a lot of use cases, those are kind of hard to find. And we used to have a picture of the famous scene from Pulp Fiction, where Samuel Jackson asks one of the guys to say what again, and we had, I dare you to say deep learning one more time. And I guess it's just a little bit about how you can actually, you have to pay attention to the hypes, and they're really easy to write, especially for us, this whole AI hype. We've never put AI into the title of our conferences, but if we put it, we'd probably get a lot more attendees, but we'd get the wrong attendees in. Mm. And that's a little bit about focusing on the right part of hypes that I find important if we're looking at maybe the more modern approaches.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you bring that up, because so we are very, very interested in supporting the development of AI, but I agree with you. We are finding that it's so hyped that anyone and everybody says that they're doing development in AI, it seems these days. And it's really hard for us to kind of wrap our heads around the space and really understand what is validated, what can actually be useful. It's like sifting through a haystack to find like the one, needle that would actually be clinically useful. So I agree with you. It draws a big crowd. And especially when you say you have funding for AI, you get like everybody just swarming, and it's really hard to know, and especially because we don't have internally the expertise in AI. So we're trying to like vet which companies to support, and having to bring in other experts to help us review proposals, because it's hard for us to know like what actually, we're not coders and we're not, we're medical experts. We're not computer science people. So it's like very hard for us to understand the space, but we also recognize that this is the future of medicine and we love to be in the forefront of things. So we are definitely diving in head first and putting a lot of money behind it.
Yeah,
yes.
maybe.
Oh, sorry. Over to you, Balint.
Yeah, thanks. So maybe there are many challenges to solve before we or a lot of companies are focusing on AI solutions, because usually the fundamentals have to be stable before we analyze it, before we automate it, before we put on top of that different advanced solutions. So even if the direction is having sometimes in the future more and more artificial intelligence solutions, now maybe we are facing with more practical challenges like solving the data accessibility, as most of the scientists are working in silos and they are specialists in different fields, and between these silos nowadays the interoperability is not that seamless, which could be. So maybe, for example, working on this level first could be a great foundation for later more advanced solutions.
I think those are really great points. Medzi, were you going to chime in there for a second?
I just wanted to mention that AI front. What's strange for me is that people run with the flag of AI instead of focusing on, I guess, the actual problems that they're trying to solve, which is the story that you really want to get across. AI is a technology to solve things. It's not the actual solution. So, and yes, of course, I might use, but for all parts and purposes, if you had hamsters within a box that were providing the solution to some problem, it does matter, but at the end of the day, I think that's the difficult part, that there's too much focus on sometimes the technology and sometimes a little bit less focus on the actual problem. And then you do get lost because everybody uses the same type of technology, or say they do.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. One of the things we've started doing is being very, very targeted in the way we put out requests for proposals. So like, for example, I'm trying to fund AI and see if there's any utility in utilizing artificial intelligence to actually interpret echocardiograms and heart ultrasounds to help detect very small nuances that the clinician cannot detect, which would be indicative of early stages of organ deterioration in AL amyloidosis. So it's a very specific, very specific target. And so we're putting out a request for proposals that says, hey, if you know AI and you're in the AI tech space and you can understand the data that's available and how AI can help to interpret it, because I think also the amount of data that you have to work with, it varies significantly depending on which disease you're targeting and which specific aspect of the disease or treatment process you're targeting. So we have a very specific target, and if there's people who have the AI capabilities to help address the problem, then that's what we're interested in. So we've gotten we have another proposal out right now, actually, for Chinese innovators, because it's an opportunity to incubate out of our Shanghai office, where we're looking specifically at atrial fibrillation and the use of AI in helping to address the China's 2030 Ministry of Health mandates. So again, very specific target, very specific disease state, you know, and really trying to get pitches from innovators who could actually solve the problem at hand.
Those are really great specific examples. Thank you so much for sharing those, Joanna. Rahul, I know when we spoke as well, you know, you talked about working with innovative companies with runway and, you know, outside of kind of the confines of bigger pharma, looking for these specific solutions. One thing that you mentioned was really like the concept of this whale hunting. And I think it flows into this conversation of, you know, this big broad band of AI and technology and what we're talking about. And on the other flip side of that, from a health tech innovation perspective, this kind of big broad band of big pharma and what that means, right? But in a more modern context, you know, how do you see companies being able to find those niches and respond to these requests, right, in a way that's innovative and yet realistic for themselves?
Yeah, so I think we're in many ways we're in the golden age of biotech, given the amount of capital that's pouring in, how many companies went public in 2020, and I think it's an exciting opportunity for startups to identify those companies that are most innovative and are willing to take big bets because you know that in the area that they're working in, there are particular challenges. Maybe it's around patient-reported outcomes. Maybe it's around predictability. Maybe they don't have the right patient scales, et cetera. So it's a point that Joanna was just bringing up. It is really important to aim your solution to a very, very specific problem in the beginning, and then use that effectively as a wedge to then gain access to a much larger market. But start very specifically rather than trying to boil the ocean right from the get-go. We've had some great relationships with early stage biotechs where they know that in order to grow at the speed and scale that early stage biotechs need to grow at, they need to take some big swings and are willing to experiment with interesting technologies that perhaps big pharma doesn't have the need for, or they have humans or resources that they can throw at the problem that biotech doesn't have the luxury to do just yet. So finding that internal champion that has the pain point, and you figure out, and then it allows you to also get to product market fit far more quickly because you're focusing on a small subset of the industry, you're nailing that, and then you're expanding from there.
I think that's a really great point, understanding that disruptive innovation and the role of that. And, you know, something that everybody here has mentioned in terms of technology that they're either seeking or gaps in pharma of any size really is this, you know, engagement with patients in a different way. And that kind of brings us to this higher level brand marketing kind of collaborative partnerships where pharma either doesn't have the ability for a brand reason or just wants to branch out and create a different level of engagement with patients through patient-reported outcomes, patient recruitment, that type of thing. But really creating almost these little, you know, very light relationships and collaborations with companies. And it's an interesting trend that I'm seeing in terms of educational, you know, patient engagement and that type of stuff. But I think it really speaks to understanding the value add and the audience, and that maybe it's an ad that you can bring that's outside of pharma's core business model, right? And I think, you know, this disruptive innovation from a vendor perspective, you know, really begs the question, and I'll kind of go through our panelists here and get their thoughts on this. But what do you see in terms of this trend, and why do you feel like that is a big need in all levels of pharma and biotech at this point? Balint, will we start with you, please?
Yeah, so what I can see is this trend focusing on the rebranding of pharma and putting the health in the center is starting from the people, because what I can see is nowadays we are in a trend where prevention and proactive health management is more and more important compared to the times decades ago, and we can see the reaction from the small and big corporates on this trend. And on one hand, we can see that a lot of small companies are creating great solutions for this prevention, health, nutrition, wellness services. But on the other hand, we also can see that pharma companies also would like to involve all these values and to enrich their message with the health term. So I can see a lot of cooperation opportunities for smaller companies, startups who are not originally focusing on pharma relations, but can find good synergy with the pharma companies, because for the pharma companies, they don't necessarily need develop this branding awareness in-house. It's better to have this result as part of a bigger collaboration.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Actually, we have a great question here in the chat. I'm going to quickly read. It says, how is pharma approaching partnering with digital therapeutics and population health platforms as a partner or adjuvant for their therapies? Joanna, do you want to take a stab at that for us?
Yeah, I would love to answer this question. So we do population PK analyses as part of all of our large pivotal trials. So if you have technologies in this space, we would definitely be interested in innovating and the way in which we're doing these analyses. It's definitely a big part of every major development that we have. Is there like a specific, I hope that answers the question. I don't know if there's a specific aspect of population sciences we do a lot of pop PK analyses with all of our new therapeutics. So when you're developing a drug and you're looking at pharmacokinetics, we do a lot of Bayesian modeling. We look to see how the PK analyses within a particular study measures up against real world evidence and population pharmacokinetic modeling. So those are just kind of some examples, but if somebody has like a specific aspect of this that they want me to address, I'm happy to dive further.
I think that's great. I want to go back and visit the panelists to kind of round out the rest of the previous question regarding kind of the trends of these not necessarily clinical specific technologies, but maybe adjacent technologies in this regard, right? Of digital therapeutics, population health platforms, other kind of add-ons for partnerships, and the trends that those kind of branding and marketing relationships with pharma are bringing. And Rahul, I think you had some really great comments on this when we spoke around, this actually being a really great opportunity to find a market leader and kind of piggyback off of that distribution for possibly a really young startup to kind of make a way and a path forward through kind of the noise of the market.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsey. I think oftentimes partnerships for early stage biotechs can be a bit of a distraction, particularly when a small company is partnering with another small company. But if you can forge a relationship with a market leader that already has some of the plumbing in place that you're looking for, that ties to big pharma, and you can, I think everyone's looking to innovate. And if it adds an additional revenue stream, or folks with that plumbing in place are willing to take a bet on a particular technology and start to sell that to some of their partners, I think that could be really interesting. It could act as a way for you not to have to wait a year and a half. I think another thing that might be interesting for folks would be that, maybe you can't get into big pharma, but you can engage with subject matter experts or KOLs that oftentimes work and partner with big pharma. And if somebody is running, let's say, an investigator-initiated study, and the risk of trying some of these new technologies is much lower in an investigator-initiated study, but if it does pay off, then that KOL can become your champion and serve as a conduit to big pharma. I think that could also serve as an interesting avenue for early stage startups to gain some exposure in a much quicker way than usual.
Can I add to that, Lindsey? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I absolutely agree. So we fund many investigator-initiated trials. The particular franchise that I'm managing right now, we have over 200 investigator-initiated trials that we're funding. So I think that's a really great idea to kind of get in there where there's much lower risk. As far as integrating a new technology into a company sponsored like phase 2 or phase 3 trial that's part of a regulatory pathway, we're going to be much more selective about what we try to bring into that, because if it mucks up our data or it like tampers with anything in a way that's not totally validated and going to be endorsed by the FDA, that would be extremely risky for us and the very large investment of hundreds of millions of dollars that we have poured into a regulatory trial. So the investigator-initiated studies are a great way, and kind of trying to tap into those investigators at large academic medical centers is a really good idea. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that we also do a lot of population studies and you utilize a lot of technology and data analysis in population data when it comes to preparing dossiers for what we call our market access team. So every large pharma company has a division. We call it market access. There's various different names for it, which is the division, which is the team in the company that actually works to prepare a dossier to present to payer organizations and government organizations that actually provide reimbursement. So obviously, when we have a new technology, we want to make sure that patients have access to it. So we have these, very in-depth negotiations with payer groups, and globally, in the U.S. this happens a lot of times with private payers, but we also negotiate with Medicare and Medicaid. And for example, in countries like Canada or in various European countries, we're negotiating directly with the government for reimbursement. And so like the National Health System, for example, in the UK. So when we're preparing those, it's like a very large, thousands of pages document, we oftentimes will do a lot of real world data analysis. We'll do a lot of population analysis, a lot of biostatistics analysis to make a case, to kind of build a case for why there's a need, why this disease is devastating, why it's costing people a lot. So if you do like financial modeling that can apply, for example, and you have technology that helps to analyze data to build a financial case for why, earlier treatment will actually save payers money in the long run, that sort of thing. That is another aspect of kind of utilizing tech to analyze data that can be very useful to a large pharma company. And if you have contacts in the market access division, or if you can reach out to those individuals, that's a really good place to go. If you're trying to get your technology, if you have a truly validated technology that you think is rigorous enough that could be integrated into a regulatory study, your target would be the clinical development lead who's developing a particular trial that you're aware of, that's part of their portfolio of development, the company's portfolio of development, or the study responsible physician, or what we call the GMAL, which is the Global Medical Affairs Lead, or the Global Medical Director, would be the people who could actually kind of help advocate internally to consider your technology and integrating it into a company-sponsored study.
That is phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that. It actually reminds me of something, Rahul, you said on the phone, which is, as part of these considerations, we've talked a lot about kind of what these gaps are and different ways to work with pharma, but then it's like, I feel like a lot of people go, well, I don't know where to start. And Joana, that's a really great kind of tip there of who to target. But something else that you said and kind of reiterated a couple times was the why, right? And that was something, Rahul, you brought up of, do you know your why as a company, and where does that fit with pharma's why, right? Do you mind kind of sharing your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. So I think to a point that I brought up a little bit earlier, which was that understanding what are the challenges that pharma is facing, and one of them being patient engagement as an example. And there's plenty of examples now of companies that initially started focusing on patient engagement and building apps to gather data from patients and really understand what that why looked like. I think really encourage companies early on to get data as quickly as possible through kind of any means necessary, obviously following the right ethics and running things through the IRB, but focusing on getting data as quickly as possible, because it gives you a disproportionate amount of leverage when you then start to have some partnership discussions where you can actually show data. And it builds credibility when you're going to these companies with data, and they're able to then see where the puck might be headed by leveraging what you have built, rather than just going there, in the absence of any data and much more pie in the sky. It's a much bigger bet for any partner to take on you.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Medzi, you brought something up, which was don't underestimate the value of the story to tell. And basically finding that kind of overarching story that connects your product solution to their problem, right?
Yeah, that's me putting my account manager or sales executive hat on, right? That what I tend to feel is we pitch technology and we pitch solutions, and it goes back a little bit to what I said about the AI part, right? That when you are going to get in front of those people, to which I'll revert to how you can get to them in just a moment, there's no amount of questions that you can ask that is too much, right? To get to really what are the pain points that they have, because we tend to, I struggle with this in my team, and I struggle with myself sometimes, that I try to answer the wrong questions. And I might have come up with a technology, and when I try to pitch it, or a solution, I'm trying to pitch that solution without going one step beyond, to really find the pain points with a story, right? This is an end-to-end story, and you need to be able to fit in what you're offering into the almost entire work life of the person you're actually going to talk to. Your solution is going to be one part of that. And it needs to fit into their story, and they need to be able to tell you how that fits in. And we tend to stop one step before that. And then your story just floats in the air. And then somebody else might come along who does understand the entire process into which your technology or solution fits in, and they are simply more convincing because they answered the need better, because they've identified the need better. Before handing it back to you, Lindsey, one quick comment back to the disruptive innovation and how to get in, because I saw questions around that. And besides these specific CMOs, I found that almost all pharma companies have started up their internal ideation platforms. There's ideation, there's disruptive innovation leads. I know a guy in GSK who reported directly to the CEO. His role was for 5 years to do disruptive innovation. He was interested in everything anybody could have brought to him. His goal was to fail 50% of the time, at least. I think his KPI was that the projects that he started had to fail 50% of the time, which means he had a lot of room to experiment, to bring in new technologies. And he worked with startups all around the world. And there's similar people I know in Boehringer Ingelheim who are doing the same. So getting to those people, and they have overarching responsibilities, not just specifically to research oftentimes. So they're a good entry. But back to you, Lindsey.
Well, I think that's a great segue, because that's really the next topic is, we can know about these market access teams, we can know about these people that exist, and other than wondering how we get those jobs where your KPI is to fail half the time, how do we actually get in contact with these people, right? I think that's a really big thing. And Medzi, I think you had mentioned a specific type of conference, and then Joanna, I'd really like to hear from you specifically as well on, how do you get in front of these people?
So what pharma has been doing, at least I was involved in an alliance called the Pistoia Alliance, which is a pre-competitive. It's named after a small Italian city, after a bunch of pharma companies got together because they were really annoyed with the vendors and how vendors were treating them. So they created an alliance, which is the pre-competitive research IT alliance, but there's others around that. And they have meetings relatively often, and they do competitions, and they do these open innovation days, to bring in innovation, because they they know that they don't have the flexibility. So much like these disruptive innovators, these pre-competitive opportunities are a good way to meet, and you get to meet relatively senior people that can provide you access.
I'll add to that. So if you go to the major academic congresses where we're presenting our data, our entire leadership team will be there. Go to one of our, at Johnson & Johnson, for example, in oncology, if you're in the oncology space, one of the largest congresses of the year is ASH, the American Society of Hematology. Even though it's an American society, it draws a global audience. 25,000 people attend usually each year. Johnson & Johnson presents a lot of big data there. We showcase, we oftentimes our data will get selected as like an oral presentation or even, like a major session at the Congress. So if you, like, for example, if you're trying to pitch to either market access or the medical clinical team, go to one of our presentations. Like, we will be lining the front row. And then after the presentation is over, just come right up to us and say like, hey, my name is so-and-so, give us your business card, give us your elevator pitch or whatever. Our entire team is usually there whenever we're at like a major congress where we're presenting a lot of data. So it's a good opportunity to come and meet us.
No, I think that's a phenomenal tip.
And it also shows us that like you're in the space, that you're legitimate in the space, because if you're truly legitimate in the oncology space, you would be at ASH. You know what I mean? So it shows, and it's inexpensive, it's not a cheap Congress to attend. So it shows us that like you have some sort of backing, some sort of funding, that you're like operating in sort of a legitimate oncology space. And it just gives us that ultimate credibility when we meet you, that like, you're there, you're involved, you're part of the academic community, and we're more likely to listen to what you have to say than if we like met you on the street or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really great point too, and actually segues well into kind of our last wrap up here is, setting appropriate expectations on working with pharma, and specifically from a big pharma perspective, having, to your point, the legitimacy, the backing, like there are going to be some probably foundational things, right, that are going to be required. It's unlikely, I'm going to venture to guess here, that you're going to pick up a good idea off the street and give it enough merit to run with it, right?
Well, we do. I'll say that we do, but there's a different mechanism for that kind of engagement. So if that's where you're at, which is totally great, and we do like to fund small, young biotech companies, but we do that through JLabs. That's our biotech incubator. That is a place where we provide various different sizes of grants, and we put out these requests for proposals. We call them quick fire challenges, where we'll say, hey, send us your best ideas. We're interested in funding, this particular topic. We're usually very specific. And if you're developing technology in the space, we have, one grant for 100,000, one grant for 250,000. They vary. Sometimes they're more than that. Sometimes they're less than that, and you can throw your hat in the ring. So that's like, there is an opportunity. We don't want to exclude people who are innovating and are in those very early stages and of just trying to get their company off the ground. We want to encourage that. So there is a mechanism for that, but you kind of have to know the time and the place that fits where you're at. If you want to meet with the senior leadership of an established franchise within the company that's running, hundreds of millions of dollars of clinical trials, and you want to integrate your technology into that, you're going to have a certain level of legitimacy. That's correct.
Yeah. And I think the other part of it too, and I think Rahul, you had mentioned this, was not to necessarily underestimate the challenge of working in terms of integration. And Medzi and Balint, I'd like to hear from you on this more on the technical software side as well, right? Of just the challenges of working through all of the structural hoops and silos that can be present, especially the bigger you go in pharma.
Yes. So one interesting thing I would like to join to Rahul's and Medz's points is the user experience. So when we are designing a user experience in the pharma world, on one side, if we design for the end patients, for the end clients, then we can bring the best practices from the latest consumer applications, because that users, especially the younger and more tech-savvy generations, are really adapted to the latest trends. So this kind of consumerization can be seen in the patient-facing or end-user-facing applications. But one really interesting thing is when we are designing a new solution for the experts, for the scientists, it's better to check first their everyday habits, how they approach the problems, how they deal with the different workflows, because most likely it's not the mainstream consumer user experience, what is needed for them, but it's a really special, really focused solution. So first we have to see who is the end user for our HealthTech solution within the pharma, and after that we have to tailor the design, the experience to that, and the technology aspects are just coming after that.
Yeah, and thank you. That's actually a really good kind of wrap up. And actually, I'm going to ask each of our other panelists just to provide kind of a final thought or any last words before we move into our networking session. Medzi, we'll start with you.
Last words always sounds a bit ominous. I think I talked about this as a vendor. There are a lot of software vendors with a lot of different challenges. One thing I've found, which is something to keep in consideration, is that there are a lot of IT departments are being outsourced, and which means that pharma is in general shedding a lot of its highly skilled expertise to switch them off into outsourced consultants, and the quality there of the consultants that they hire is really fluctuating, and it's really luck who gets assigned to your project oftentimes. So if you're thinking about approaching pharma, especially in early stages with technology, in terms of a software or that kind of approach that requires software integration, then I would strongly suggest to think about that ahead of time, because you have no idea how complex it may get. So the simpler your solution is, the easier its rollout, the better.
Thank you. And we have 2 minutes. So 1 minute for you, Rahul, and 1 for Joana.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So I think, just reiterating, try to get some data as quickly as possible when you're at the earliest stages. Try to figure out what that wedge is to validate your MVP as quickly as possible, and encourage folks to try to partner with innovative, high growth biotechs while contemporaneously pursuing a big pharma partner, but just be ruthless about what you focus on.
Is it my turn? Okay, I want to say that we do want to partner with you. Pharma needs to be in relationship with smaller companies. We need your creativity, spontaneity, innovation. We recognize this. Know where your technology fits in, know where you are in your development, and target the segments of the pharma business that are most appropriate for integrating your technology based on where your company is at. And I just wanted to let folks know that if they're not familiar with J Labs, which is our innovation segment of the business, our incubator, visit our website. It's jlabs.jnjinnovation.com, and that's spelled J, the letter J, the letter N, the letter J, innovation.com. And you can follow the we have 12 quickfire challenges that we're going to be rolling out in the next quarter. So keep an eye out for those. If your technology falls into those RFPs that we're going to be putting out, do submit your proposals. And then if you're further along in your development, then do start targeting some of those internal individuals who can help to advocate for bringing your technology and integrating it into the more traditional forms of clinical development.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. This is a phenomenal panel. I think the key takeaway is don't be scared. Go for it. There's lots of opportunity, and Big Pharma does want to work with innovative companies. So let's continue this conversation in the Slack channel for the next 3 minutes, and then we'll kick off the HealthTech Startup Award session. The HealthTech Networking Slack link is in the chat. All right, we're going to take a break, stay online, and we'll be back shortly.
Thanks for the discussion.
All right. Welcome back from your networking session. We're going to kick off the next part of this rapid conference today. So welcome to the February HealthTech Startup Award event hosted by the HealthTech Networking Club. My name is Sandra Miller, and I am CEO of Runway Innovation Hub in San Francisco, and I'll be moderating this pitch event. I would like to introduce you to our terrific panel of judges, which includes Roger Kuo, venture partner at Going VC, Dr. Gary Goldman, founding partner at the Global Health Impact Fund, Ciro Gonzalez with Munich RE Ventures, and Balint Bene, founder and CEO of Bene Studio. I'm going to ask each of the judges to give us a quick intro and just to give us a sense of your focus with your investing activities. First up, let's have Roger with Going VC.
Hello, everyone. My name is Roger Kuo. I'm a venture partner with Going VC. We primarily focus on pre-seed, early stage pre-seed, seed, and Series A companies. We're sector and geographic agnostic. We usually syndicate our deals, check sizes ranging from 100 to 200K. So if you have something interesting that you want to pitch to me, just please find me on LinkedIn, or you can just send me an email to roger@gbc.partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Next up is Dr. Gary Goldman. Gary, can you give a little intro about you and your work?
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, great.
Yes.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Gary Goldman. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Health Impact Fund and Global Health Impact Network. We're a clinician-focused venture capital fund, and our focus is on digital health. Our check size is usually about 250 to 1.5K, and we have a very targeted clinician-focused approach on our due diligence. We have a very large network of clinicians that targets investments and does extensive clinical due diligence on a deal before we invest. And our network of funding is all clinicians.
Thank you very much, Gary. Next up is Ciro with Munich Re.
Hi, everyone. So Munich Re Ventures, it's the corporate venture arm of Munich Re, which is one of the biggest reinsurance companies in the world. We focus on different areas. I particularly look into InsurTech and digital health. And when I talk about digital health, it's also sometimes very adjacent with health insurance products. And our current focus, it's more on the Series A and B. That's our current sweet spot, but we do look sometimes from earlier deals in seed or later stage, more in the Series C as well. Check sizes can vary. We have written checks from 500K up to 20 million.
Thank you very much, Ciro. And our final judge is Balint. Balint?
Hello, everybody. My name is Balint Bene. I'm the CEO of Bene Studio, and I would like to bring my product development experiences to share here to support all of you. And I also would like to learn from all of you today. And I'm really excited to see the upcoming pitches.
Terrific. Thank you, Balint. All right. So today we have 4 exciting startups who will be pitching. The startups include Jaden Risner, who's CEO of Family Proud, Allison Kassirer, founder and CEO of Robin. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. Wes Hill of Mente, and Walter Larkins with Sapphire RCMS. So we're really looking forward to hearing from all these great startups. Here's how today's session will run. Each startup will have 4 minutes for their pitch. After this pitch, I will ask the judges to briefly ask any questions to maybe qualify or confirm something that they maybe didn't understand from the pitch, and also to give any feedback. And after this Q&A and feedback session, I will then come to the judges and I'll ask you to score that particular pitch from a magical scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest. And you'll indicate your score by showing your fingers, right, for your score. And then of course the highest scoring startup will be announced as this month's HealthTech startup. And the winning startup will receive a product acceleration session with Bene Studio, which will help to enhance the development of your product. And in addition, the winning startup can have a one-on-one coaching session with me from Runway, because I do a lot of coaching to help startups with fundraising. And all startups who participate in this session can have a free product discovery session from Bene Studio. So everyone comes away with something wonderful today. To all of the networking club members who are watching today, please share your feedback, questions, praise with our startups during the pitch session on Slack. And you can also share any thoughts with the judges, and your feedback can be highlighted in the this event's summary, highlight summary that will be shared online later. So startups, let's kick things off with you. I will, the first up, we'll have Jaden with Family Proud. And so Jaden, if you can come off mute, and I'll let you know when we see your slides, if you can talk so we can make sure we can hear you.
Yeah, sounds
there
great.
We go.
Thank you.
Hear that great voice. And we're seeing your slides, and I'm going to keep time just here. And so at 4 minutes, you know, if you're over time, I'll just have to gently sort of say, hey, wrap it up. But with that, whenever you're ready, take it away, Jaden.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks everyone for everyone's time. I'm Jaden Risner, the CEO and co-founder of Family Proud. We're transforming the way that we support our loved ones. And we're a patient care software company that helps families navigate their care journey during their time of need. Several years ago, I was deployed with the Navy as a special operations helicopter pilot, was notified that my mother had a heart attack, and there was nothing that I could do. That gut-stinging feeling of how do I ensure my loved one is navigating their care journey, connecting to the right resources, is certainly was the inspiration, and I know is only one of many stories. This is Lucy. Lucy was diagnosed with cancer 2 weeks ago, and Lucy's family now faces the burdens of care. Here in the US, medical expenses are the #1 reason families go bankrupt. We know the emotional, what do I do? Who do I talk to? The logistical, who's watching after Lucy's siblings? Certainly the burdens of care as the #1 problem. Family Proud Solution provides Lucy's family now the ability to connect to other families that have been through a similar situation through peer support, sharing lessons learned, and talking to someone who truly understands. Virtual experiences that address isolation, the care calendar where the backend actually provides recommendations of here's what's helped other families similar to you. The care registry, think wedding registry, but for patients and families, we provide product service recommendations based on the hardship. So providing a transparent and sustainable support model for Lucy's support network that's asking, how can I help? Family Proud not only provides value to the family in their hands and meets them where they are, but at the same time provides valuable information and data back to an organization that supports them. This organic patient and support engagement through Lucy's family's journey through the care continuum, acting as this bridge and wraparound services, both on the business aspect as well as the health and education aspect. What's unique is the ability to actually account for these socio-demographic variables. What language does the family speak? Where do they live? What is their point of care? Certainly accounts for the ability to provide the best possible recommendations through a specific journey. Family Proud's market is starting in the oncology space. We recognize there's a ton of crossover capability with over $4 trillion spent in healthcare, $350 billion just here in the US are out-of-pocket expenses. Family Proud's business model is focused around software licensing through the organizations that we partner with to empower their existing community. We also have revenue share agreements through the products and services that we offer on the registry. We're an SBIR recipient here in the United States with the Air Force, phase 1 selected and funded, phase 2 selected pending funding, successful pilot starting in the HEMOC space here in San Diego with over 500 family signups and existing partnerships supporting both our community engagement as well as the product service lines. We're currently going through our first raise pre-seed, targeting a 750. We have raised 550 of it, so looking to close that last 200 of our pre-seed. Also looking for strategic partners to, of course, grow the number of families that we support this year, as well as the engagement. Myself, Naval Academy graduate, MBA. Most importantly, I've been a caregiver now to my mom for about 5 years. Understand those burdens of care. Clay Tresca, our co-founder, and call my brother and better half. 2-time cancer survivor, 2nd-time terminal, is now a healthcare executive. Certainly everyone on our team has been a patient, survivor, or caregiver ourselves and understand what it means to deliver empathy through technology. I'd like everyone to reimagine what's possible for families such as Lucy's, not only providing them that warmth in their hand to help them navigate that care journey, making it easy for them and making it easy for the support network to provide that support through that care journey, but also to organizations that support them. So empowering existing community, addressing underserved communities, and truly addressing health equities at scale. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jaden, and ended on time. Perfect. Judges, let's please sort of show some hands so you can ask questions. So Balint first, and then we'll go with Gary.
Yeah, thanks. So first of all, it's a really important problem to solve, really important topic. And I'm curious about the competitive landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's definitely a number of siloed tools out there. We see GoFundMe, strong comparable, fellow San Diego company. A third of GoFundMe sites are medical donations. Caring Bridge is specific in terms of the social wall share, but in terms of something that accounts for community variables while also being this family and community facing, certainly not as many strong players.
Thanks.
Gary?
Yeah, hi. This is a great idea. Obviously, you're taking, especially in this world of telehealth, you're taking us from that episodic care to more of a continuum of care and engaging the family, which I think is wonderful from a clinician perspective. I'm a little confused as to who are your clients? Like who would license this platform and then use it? Is it like Oncology Centers of America, or is it practices? So yeah, if you clarify that.
Yeah, no, great question. So our phase one are patient and family support organizations. So right now, military family organizations and cancer organizations. So think Pancreatic Cancer Society, CRC. So organizations and associations that have existing community. And so the ability to license the software to them to activate and provide technology to empower their existing community. The phase two is where we're looking at systems and payers. Of course, that phase one is designed to demonstrate engagement, the data, and the metrics and revenue to be able to position for phase two. We do have some ongoing discussions with some larger systems for that phase two, but recognize as a young company, those B2B cycles are much longer. So we're focused on the phase one.
Great, thank you.
Tira.
Yeah, following up on the revenue model side, I think on the you mentioned too the licensing, and also it seems like you have like a profit sharing for the caregiving part. How does that exactly work? So, if you could elaborate, that'd be great.
Yeah, so the licensing side certainly is dependent on number of users, services that come with that. So type of reporting, the analytics, in terms of the SaaS licensing aspect. The revenue share side averages about 10%. So an example is Sunbasket is a food service. You are a supporter looking to support a family on the platform. They have listed food as one of the recommended registry items. The ability for you to purchase a food subscription and food to be delivered to that family, no cost to the family. The company provides the service, and we have a revenue share with Sunbasket for 20% as an example of a revenue share agreement there.
Nice. All right, so judges, I want to switch to feedback, and if there's any feedback or thoughts about how to make this, pitch better the next time. With startup pitches, they say it sort of takes giving this pitch at least 30 times before you sort of get in a groove. So we're always learning when we're pitching. So any thoughts about any feedback for Jaden and how he might make this even better next time? Roger?
Yeah, I'd say excellent job. I had some questions, but they were all answered. So excellent jobs here. I know it's tough to condense it all. I would have liked to have seen something on the competition, but you answered that question. And I know it's tough to condense it in 4 minutes, but overall, excellent presentation. You covered as much as you could.
Thank you.
All right. Great. So let's switch to the judging. So scoring. So judges, show me your scores for this pitch. Show me your fingers. 4, 2 4s, 3 4s. All right. So we've got 4 4s. Very good, Jaden. All right. Nice job.
Thank you, everyone.
Really enjoyed that presentation. And next up, we have Allison, who's founder and CEO of Robin. So Allison, we see you. Can we hear you and see your slides?
Hi there, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let me just share. Okay, can you guys see my slide deck?
Yep. You see your slides, and as soon as you're ready, go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Ali Kassir, and I am the founder and CEO of Robin. Robin is a maternal health and wellness company. We power pre- and postpartum virtual care to support expecting and new parents on their path to parenthood while improving patient outcomes for providers. We have a network of 200 complementary care providers. So this includes doulas, lactation consultants, infant care specialists, infant sleep specialists, birth educators, and more. We also have a 75,000 parent community across social media and email. Our 91% female team has deep expertise in maternal health and wellness, marketing, and engineering. I started this company so that no parent would ever feel as alone or confused as I once did on my path to parenthood. Turns out 89% of moms feel unsupported. And that's a number that's only been exacerbated in the current environment of COVID. The pregnancy journey has really changed over the past year. Those in-person hospital birthing classes and maternity tours all canceled. Parents are now discharged 24 hours after vaginal birth, which is barely enough time to get the verbal education that you need. In-person support and visitation is drastically reduced. You're lucky if you can get your partner in the hospital with you. And the maternal mental health crisis, which costs $14 billion a year, has also been exacerbated. Aside from COVID, there are larger healthcare trends at play here. The movement to telehealth and value-based care is urgent for maternal care. And that's because we're in the middle of a maternal mortality crisis in this country. More and more women die in childbirth or from childbirth-related causes every year. It's actually gone up 2 times over the past 30 years. Think about that. 30 years from when my mom had me to when I've had my kids. 2 times. And for women of color, they're 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth than a white woman. With almost half of births being covered by Medicaid, it's no wonder that 4 states are already reimbursing for complementary care like doula care. Systemically in the US, we're really set up for childbirth, but we're not set up for parent birth, which is where Robin comes in, for the parent who has just been born. Our text-based perinatal support concierge is really like a digital doula. It's powered by conversational AI and real Robin providers like doulas, lactation consultants, newborn care specialists, and more. Because we take a patient-centric approach, there's no staff training necessary, and Robin integrates seamlessly with hospitals and health systems. So we're supporting expecting and new parents while also reducing operational overhead for providers. For parents, we're really meeting them in that urgent moment of need. If your baby won't latch, that need is primal. But for providers, those are the non-medical, unnecessary questions that they're being pulled into via email, phone, and follow-up visits. Some of you may have heard of the documentary, The Business of Giving Birth. However you feel about the documentary, the title is very apropos. Birth is big business. It is so big, in fact, that it is the #1 reason for inpatient stay at hospitals and one of the highest expenses for both public and private payers. While it might be tempting to look at this $56 billion annual market, I challenge you to actually look at the $3 billion midwife and doula market. This is made up of only 18,000 businesses in the US, none of which has greater than 5% market share, by the way. And they're only servicing 6% of births. Imagine if you could scale that type of complementary care and education to the other 94% of births using technology. And that's really what Robin is trying to do. So we're about 4 weeks away from completing our MVP for the text-based perinatal concierge. And we're already having strategic conversations with potential partners to pilot this with. As you can see, there are some major providers and payers on this list. The New Jersey concentration is definitely intentional because New Jersey is one of those 4 states that does reimburse for doula care. We are not actually fundraising right now. We did raise a pre-seed round in late 2019, a $1.2 million round. And we will be going out for pre-seed extension or seed round in the next month or so. So thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to answering some of your questions.
Great. Thank you, Allison. I think Dr. Goldman has a question for you.
Oh my gosh, this is spectacular. So just so you know who you're talking to, so I am an obstetric anesthesiologist married to a maternal fetal medicine doctor, and I've spent the last 35 years giving the pain management and labor lecture to pregnant women. So I know this space really well. I mean, I've been wondering why someone hasn't done this for the last 35 years. So this is spectacular. I guess I have so many questions, but what I'm gonna focus in on is, see, the issue with this right now is it's very personal, as you know, right?
Yeah.
And it's very targeted per the institution. So if I'm delivering in Berkeley at Alta Bates versus in San Francisco at CPMC, those organizations very much want to target and white label what they're delivering to their patient, and they tend to want to do it with their providers, right?
Yep.
But at the same time, I know, like when I give the talk, I use a national video, right? Because it's very informational. So what's your approach to that as a business model? When you go to an institution and say, we have this service for your patients, whether it's the OBs or whether it's women and infant services, how do you deliver it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously, we have built a brand for ourselves. We have a very large community across social media and email. So there are moms who know about us and might actually pick the institution that they go to because we offer these complimentary services. That's one hand, but on the other hand, we are able to white label the text-based perinatal concierge, and that is what we're talking to with the hospital in New York that was listed in terms of the strategic conversations. So we can kind of pick and choose, and I think one of the benefits of having this large complementary care provider network is we can also hand select the providers that we work with. So if there's a hospital in San Francisco that only wants to work with providers in San Francisco and they want IBCLCs as opposed to doulas, we can do that. We can work with them in terms of like hand selecting the providers that they want to work with. Because part of the challenge is in some of these wellness modalities, the credentials are all over the place, depending on what state you're in, depending on what modality you're talking about. So that's another thing that obviously a hospital or a health system is going to want to have a say in, and that's totally fine. And we can, agree to that early on.
Great, thank you.
Roger.
Yes, so thank you for the presentation. I feel like this is definitely something that's needed, as was the last one. You mentioned the 4 states, I believe you said, that reimburse for doula care. So does that limit your market since it's only 4 states?
So it's super interesting. So before this year, it was actually only 3 states. So Minnesota, Indiana, and Oregon. New Jersey just started as of January 1st, reimbursing for doula care. Now, the irony is it's COVID. You can't get a doula in the building if you try. And if you actually look at the reimbursement rates, if you're an actual doula and you're getting these rates, you're barely making ends meet. I mean, doulas as it is, I think, make $30,000 a year. But for a digital doula that's using conversational AI to be able to scale, the reimbursement rates actually start to make a lot of sense. So the trend that we are seeing is that more and more states are going to be reimbursing for things like doula care. It's not if, but when, because doula care reduces the C-section rate by 39%. And every payer is looking to try and reduce C-section rates across the board because C-sections cost 50% more than vaginal birth and are more dangerous, because that's why one of the reasons the maternal mortality rate has been going up. So there's this like national movement to reduce the C-section rate. Doulas can help with that. So from our perspective, yes, 4 states it's not a lot, but we think that it's going to go up. And there are other states where lactation is reimbursable. Obviously, maternal mental health is reimbursable. So there are other modalities that are already really nationwide.
But what kind of time frame are we talking about in the next couple of years? Are we talking about 10, 15 years to go nationwide to 50 states?
For doula care, we have like a policy advisor that estimates that it could be like 5 to 7 years. The current administration is very helpful because Kamala Harris has really been a big proponent for the maternal mortality crisis, maternal mortality amongst women of color, maternal mental health crisis. So we would estimate 5 to 7 years, I think, if you spoke to our policy advisor.
Okay, and no, the second question, it sounds like you're B2B, right? You're going to the providers, but you're also B2B to C, or sorry, you're also promoting this directly to the patients. Is that correct?
Yeah, so actually, if you go on our website today, you can find, book, and pay for an appointment with any of our providers in 14 different modalities. What we're finding from this B2C marketplace, though, is that there's just a lot of barriers to be going directly to parents. So first, parents have to get over the stigma of asking for help. Then they have to figure out what type of help they need. There's a huge health literacy problem in this country where a lot of people don't know what a lactation consultant is or a pelvic floor physical therapist. Then they've got to find a provider. Unless you know about Robin, there really isn't any database or place where you can find this type of complementary care. And then 9 out of 10 of the complementary care providers don't take insurance. So there's so many barriers. So we see really the only way this works is by using the payer and provider distribution strategy. So that's why, yes, we have this kind of B2C presence, but what we've learned from our community is that we need to go through the payers and providers to really impact the most parents.
Great. Okay. So Allison, one of the things I want you to do is definitely there are some comments for you on the chat window.
Okay,
really nice
perfect.
presentation. Judges, because of time, we need to shift towards scoring this pitch. So if you can put up your digits for a score for Robin. Okay, so we got 2 4s, a 3, and a 5. Great. Thank you very much. Okay. Next up, we have Wes Hill, who's founder of Mente. Wes is coming to us from Boston. So Wes, I see you. If you want to come off mute so we can hear you.
Hey, I'm gonna have to do better, I guess, so that we don't have to deal with the tiebreaker.
That's right.
Let me see if I can pull my screen up. Do you have that?
Now we do.
All right, well, I'll get started then. So I'm going to start out with a story. Dr. Codd, he's a surgeon. He's just closing a successful kidney transplant, and he looks up and he asks, where the hell is the next patient? The second kidney that they'd harvested was approaching the 24-hour mark, and if that patient didn't come in soon, it was going to expire. The nurse in the circulating row turned around because she was getting desperate. She had called the PACU, but after 20 minutes, they still hadn't called back. So she picked up the phone again. We tried to call you, but we didn't get an answer. And she stared at it. The volume was turned down to nothing. We called the front desk, and now we're taking other patients ahead of you. In the meantime, her counterpart in the scrub roller just counted 300 instruments twice, and the count was supposed to be 301. Was there an instrument left in the patient? The scrub for the next case walked in too, and she had never seen him before. He looked terrified. The scrub she was used to seeing, turns out, had thrown her back out lifting a heavy instrument tray. The patient finally leaves the OR. They rush to set up the table, and 3 of the trays they open are contaminated with bioburden. Now look, I know the story is far-fetched, but every single component of it came from an interview. And these weren't like, I remember once interviews. These were, let me tell you about yesterday, about last week. So my name is Wes Hill. I'm a founder of Mente. What is there in common with each of these events? Well, it's that people that support the OR are depending on their memory, their ability to multitask in places where they could actually depend on AI. There's an incredible precision that occurs at the surgical site, but it is surrounded by this inefficiency, waste, and frustration. Do you become a nurse because you want to press the closing button and remember to do that at the end of the case? No, you do it to care for patients. So how do we train AI to support these people in their jobs? Well, the first ingredient is data. At Menta, we use RFID to capture data from the movement of instruments into and out of the surgical site. It shows us what the surgeon is using, and it provides us this real-time picture that describes how the surgery is being performed. Okay, this is what closing looks like for a specific breast surgeon performing a lumpectomy. Now, their preferences, their needs, even many of their techniques are contained in this data stream. Well, what good is it? It depends on what we combine it with. Let's train it with outcomes. Hey, maybe we can help residents learn. We throw in surgery times, suddenly we have a live progress bar of the surgery. Put yourself in the shoes of that scrub. We can predict what instrument is going to be used next, and you're no longer terrified. CPT codes, we're looking at automated billing. Now, all of these are future possibilities. Our first product is to optimize instrument trays. It won't surprise you to learn that 80% of the instruments in the operating room are unused. Of course, some are there for emergency, but in our pilot study, we reduced tray sizes by 50%. We know exactly what the surgeons need, and we ensure that that is what's in the tray. Now, this alone justifies the cost of implementation easily. It saves $220 per surgery, or an expected $7.5 million for a first customer. That's several percent of their overall margin. But we need your help. We're currently a team of 4. There's 3 founders. We have engineers, clinicians. We've done successful pilots. We have approval from our first customer to implement for 700 surgeries each year. And the goal is now to build that out into several more customers. As investors, we've been trying to reach out to you early and often. We're not actively raising right now. There's a couple things we need to reduce risk, but we want to engage now. I know this 4 minutes goes by quick, so I'll take any of the plethora of questions I'm sure you have.
Great. Thanks very much, Wes. Balint, and then Gary.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. It's a really interesting topic and seems really practical results. But I'm curious a bit more about this revenue model. You highlighted some saving at one hospital, but what's your revenue model in general?
Yeah, we have 2 business models that we're going to make active. So the first one, and it depends on which instrumentation is actually tagged. So the first one is to attract new customers and provide this one-time tray optimization. So to do that, we have trays of general instruments that are already tagged that we match to what the hospital already owns. It's easy enough implementation because we just walk in there and say, hey, use these trays. We'll provide you the data on how to optimize your own kits. Now, for ongoing optimization and for these follow-on products, we actually tag the instrumentation that the hospital owns. So that converts us from this consulting type one-time fee into a subscription model.
Thanks.
Zero, any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, just to follow on up on that. In the terms when you're trying to optimize let's say the tray, or you talked about where you used where you think you're gonna do predictive. How would the unit economics work in the future? About those unit economics, because I think you have to acquire the piece of medicine to actually, the piece of hardware that you're offering to measure the data. So I'm just wondering about that.
Yeah, so the basic instrumentation is actually fairly cheap. So we purchase, so let's say we do this for a single service line. Colorectal surgery, we'll be monitoring 300 surgeries for this place. That'll cost us about $12,000 because we can reuse those instruments then for a different surgery, for a different pilot. So the 12,000 includes depreciation, the labor, the tagging costs, and the benefit that we deliver to them is about $65,000 per year.
Gary?
Yeah, hi, Gary Goldman. So I'm an anesthesiologist and I've run ORs for a long time. I know this space really well. So one is, the competitive nature of this. There are other companies doing this. So I'm curious as to how much research you've done with that, but also, this is a very complex workflow. And then you have to, on top of it, throw into the foray, and you're talking to an informaticist for a 27 hospital system, you have to deal with the electronic healthcare record. And that could be Epic, Cerner, whatever. So, you know, an integration with all of that. So this is not an easy space. It's a great idea. And believe me, if I had $1 for every extra 20 minutes I spent in an operating room looking for a missing instrument, I probably wouldn't have to work anymore. So I get the problem, but it's, you know, the penetration of this is not that easy into a hospital setting because of the complexity of the workflow.
Yeah, I agree. So it hasn't been that easy, but we've done it. So we brought on a software engineer at the end of the year, and he containerized our software. We don't deal with any PHI. The only thing we touch is dates, which is PHI, but we identify that immediately. So our software is containerized. It takes in a single export from something like an Epic or whatever EHR system you're using. We don't need that data live because we are processing this for the optimization at the end of the day. So the export is actually very easy for the IT team to set up. With respect to other companies doing this, there are no hospitals that have their instrumentation tagged. I wish it was, because it would make it a lot easier of a job for us because we wouldn't have to tag them. So that was one of the biggest barriers, and we developed a machine to actually tag the instrumentation for us. And we've also been in discussion with instrument manufacturers to partner with to actually do that.
Okay,
Great.
Thanks. Thank you.
Roger, any feedback or question for Wes?
Yeah,
Before we move on to judging?
I was just thinking about your product market fit. It seems like it isn't quite nailed down. Would you say that's accurate?
I wouldn't. This is why we've done almost 100 interviews to make sure we figure out what all the challenges that are facing. So I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are there.
Well, you mentioned several different applications, and instead of like, well, I don't know, maybe it was just my perception. The way you described it, it was kind of like you weren't really certain about what those applications or the product market fit might be. But maybe that was just my perception.
Yeah. So with respect to getting more customers, we don't advertise any of those follow-on solutions. Our only product is that first product of tray optimization. Those other products are follow-on products that we're working on getting data and developing. So, you know, you're seeing an inside view that our potential customers do not see. If you go on our website, you will not see those mentioned.
Okay. Yeah, now I understand it. Thank you.
Great. Judges, let's give a score for Menta. All right. We have, okay, 3 3s and a 2. Good. Very good job, Wes. All right. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Walter Larkins, CEO of Sapphire. Walter?
Everything set up.
Okay. I see and hear you. Your slides are coming. See your slides? And
next slide. Okay.
Yep. So we're ready to go when you are.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you, first of all, everyone. Great hearing everyone else's presentation and for the opportunity to speak today. As many of you know, COVID-19 has highlighted some of the challenges that hospitals are facing and how essential they are, and how Sapphire is going to be the cure for that. So my name is Walter Larkins. Sort of our approach is stop the bleeding, treat for shock, cure the pain or the patient. My passion is really solving problems that impact lives. I'm an inventor, Army veteran of about 35 years in healthcare, including a stint with J&J, so I was interested in hearing that, with a startup that generated $350 million in 3 years. I have a partner, which you heard on the phone earlier. She's my co-CEO. She has had successful exits in a SaaS platform, similar to Sapphire's model. We have complementary superpowers. We're both active in our communities and a number of nonprofits. Giving, actually, as you all know, has greater returns than receiving. So the problem is huge. 10% of all claims are denied by insurance companies, and they, frankly, aren't paying their bills. 60% of hospitals are at risk of going out of business, which represents a huge cost to hospitals and the healthcare system. So the big question is, why go after the patient if the insurance company has the money? because it's easier than going after insurance companies. Getting money from insurance companies is hard, devastating when the insurance companies don't pay because the patient assumes responsibility. So what are insurance companies actually doing? Well, while working at J&J, I discovered that insurance companies don't pay their bills. So I started an AR management company to solve that problem, and made a commitment not to go after the patient. So the good news is in that process, we were successful. That's why I'm presenting today. Our platform was developed for my AR management company and is my secret sauce and why we were so successful. We tested and validated the software's capabilities on a hospital system, generating $50 million from insurance companies versus the patients. So I decided that this system could make collection agencies obsolete. So of course I started another company being an entrepreneur, and it disrupted the needs for hospitals to use collection agencies, go after the patient, write off your profits where you can keep them in-house. That was the concept. So the opportunity is huge. We think that we can return $5 million to our hospitals, reduce our operating expenses by at least 50%. And I know that's true because I did it from my own company. This is a busy chart. The bottom line, this is an initial analysis, one of the things that we conduct for hospitals going in. And this shows that 20% of the bills weren't paid correctly. In other words, a 20% underpayment, which is pretty impactful for a hospital to see. We have 3 revenue streams. Our value proposition is really for $1.2 million in our SaaS model, we'll return between $5 and $10 million to your bottom line. And this revenue model gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of our pricing. So where are we going? Sapphire is unique because we have access to data, including contract, financial, and billing data that enable us to monetize and package data for hospitals across their system and the continuum of care in ways that are valuable to pharma, device, and manufacturers and payer relationships. We have a great advisory board of people who have been in the business and know it well, so we constantly go for them for impact to get feedback on our solution, as well as the users of our system. So our ask, we've already raised $550,000 for commercialization because it was used with a previous company. And we're looking for a $2.5 million raise. So that's the presentation. I'm really happy to look forward to any questions that you might have.
Terrific. Thank you. Let's go with Ciro first and then Gary.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation. I think this space is very, very interesting. But if you could just give a little bit more detail of how the product, your AR system recovery works. So if I go into a pilot mode with you, what would I be getting? I know the cost saving part, I understand, sure. But how does the product actually work?
Great question. So first of all, the challenge is determining the behavior. The behavior of insurance companies is not very easy to detect. So the first part of our technology grabs data from the bills, which, as you probably know, is a standard format. We convert the contracts into algorithms, and we bring in the financial data from systems like Cerner and Epic, and we've done that before. And we do perform the initial analysis. The initial analysis demonstrates the behavior in a way across. We try to get 3 years of data so we can see the data across many years to see a pattern of behavior of the insurance companies. And those of you in healthcare know that without proof, without evidence, there's no risk for insurance companies to engage in this behavior. So we really identify the evidence that increases the risk of this behavior to hospitals. And so we take that data and we send it to the client. The client says, wow, this is a huge problem. And then we have a solution to that, because obviously knowing the problem and then dealing with it are two different things. So on the back end, we're able to aggregate this data into a whole platform that allows their staff to now have this be wrapped in technology that reduces the cost to appeals, has intelligence correspondence, because now we have the data. We don't have to have long training pipeline to train staff, so that we can really implement and bulk the settlements that we're able to deliver to the hospital and really bring money in that they thought they would never get back, or even thought that they were owed.
Great. Gary?
Great question, by the way. Gary, I can't hear you. There you go.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Great.
I certainly can. Thank you.
Great presentation. Very interesting. You know, as a clinician, it's a very dry space, but AR is incredibly important. So you used a term in your presentation, so I need clarification, and I have a pet peeve about this. So you use the word blockchain, okay?
Correct.
And I will preface this by saying that probably 98% of the population, when you use that word, the only thing that they hear is Bitcoin, and have no idea what it really means.
That
so
is true.
What do you mean by blockchain in terms of utilizing blockchain in your technology?
That is a great question. All right, so I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with blockchain. I was actually looking at it a few years ago. Essentially, blockchain is really creating a trusted network. Now, our network with blockchain is going to be a private network. It's going to be a private network between the payers and the providers. So the problem with using blockchain is you have to have things to put in the block. The block is the data. So in Bitcoin, for example, it's a transaction. It's a very small number of metrics that is in that block that all the parties within that block have to agree is accurate, and then the transaction happens. So with Sapphire, we're able to turn a contract into an algorithm, which is the data that you can now, because now it's an algorithm. It is actually data. It's taking what was previously a bunch of words into an algorithm. You throw that into the block, and then all the parties will agree what's in the block. That eliminates the whole problem of having contracts in drawers. It allows us as a company to have access to the data in a much more efficient way, and enables the transactions between these different entities to really happen seamlessly. So both the payer, for the first time, really, the payer and the provider on the same playing field.
Okay. Can I ask a real quick follow-on, Sandra? Do we have time? Okay.
Yeah.
So the other part, so here's part 2 of that. So
I love it.
I don't know, and I can't remember if you actually used the term AI, but I've actually
I don't like AI. Actually, I like machine learning better than AI.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really
you went up a point by that answer.
It's like watching Terminator, you know, like I don't like that. It's a scary term, you know, machine learning is so much better.
So my question is, in the machine learning side of it, is there any part of your solution that's actually algorithmically predictive? In other words, can you say to a hospital, okay, here's what you billed for, here's the insurance, based on the data that we have in our database from all these other previous, encounters, you're very unlikely to collect from this, and you're likely to have a deficit in your AR before you even submit it?
Okay, that's also a great question. All right, so
I need a quick answer. Quick.
Yeah, I'm not trying to keep it a quick answer, but healthcare is like a crazy business.
I know.
So answers are long because it's complicated, but I'll keep it simple. There are 3 sort of phases of healthcare. There's the patient-facing phase. There's the middle phase where you do the coding and the billing, and then there's software in there that does the sort of making sure the bills aren't screwed up before they get to the insurance companies already. And then there's a back-end phase after the bill is dropped. So we're really initially starting out in the back end, on the back end phase, where after the bill is dropped. And that way we look at 3 years of data going back. As you know, most hospitals and other entities are under contract of some sort. And so we're initially able to do this retrospective and prospective analysis to see, so based upon the past, because as you know, the patient mix doesn't really change that much for hospitals, what can be expected in the future? And we're using that data right now with respect to the AR management piece of the house and learning and identifying the opportunities for them on that side. But our plan, and really this data gives us access to it, is really look at physicians and what they do. Because as you know, the bills have a lot more data on it than it did in the past, almost 10 times. They're trying to get a lot more patient information on that. And I think that data is going to give us the ability to really define these optimum patient pathways, because Sapphire brings in all these related entities. We don't just deal with hospitals. We also deal with all the other related entities that are within these hospital systems.
Thank you. Great answer.
Okay. Roger, anything, any question quick?
I had several questions, but I'll give you a really quick one.
Sure.
What's your success rate So the ones you target, what's your success rate on those?
We have never, my previous AR management account, we have never not found money that was so-called left on the table on that side, never. And the number varies in terms of orders of magnitude. And our technique, which is providing evidence to the insurance companies of their intentional behavior, allows they just pay. All the other denial management systems, as they call it, that are out there currently, they've been around for a number of years, as you probably know, they don't work because the denial rate is going up, not down. So that's really what we've proven that it works. I decided to do the software company because it works so well that I felt collection agencies would be sort of out of business if all the hospitals had this system.
So 100% on the ones you actively target? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, we always bring the money. I mean, it's just like I said, right now there's no risk for insurance companies engaging in this behavior at all, and they push all the burden on the provider to prove why they didn't pay. With this evidence, because it's illegal, it's really illegal in every state in the United States. They can't engage in these practices without consequence, but no one has any data to show that they're doing it. So away with it.
I like
this. That's really our initial entree into this.
Yeah, this is very.
All right, so I have to be time cop, and we have to.
All right, I got you.
Shift to scoring this excellent presentation and discussion. So judges, can you provide a score for Walter? And so we have 2 5s and 2 4s, right? So we have 18. Okay, so thank you to all of the startups for your pitches and judges for your feedback. Again, I'd like to remind you that nobody walks away empty-handed today, as all startups participating are eligible for a free product boost session with Bene Studio and their terrific team. And I'm happy to provide a winning startup a one-on-one coaching session. And then also the winning startup gets an advanced sort of product boost and product acceleration session with Bene Studio. And the winning startup will be highlighted this month as the HealthTech Startup of February with an exclusive interview published on the HealthTech Networking Club page and across Bene Studio media channels. And of course, we'll please do, everybody who's on this, give love to our winning startup and all the startups who took the time to participate and share their terrific work with us today. And so the results are in, and the HealthTech Startup of February is Sapphire, and Walter Larkins and his team, congratulations. So Walter, is there anything, I know I had to cut you off, but is there anything you'd like to say or have a final ask to our audience?
Well, first of all, I think the other presenters were great. And I will say that on some of the things that they were talking about, I do have a lot of relationships, and I'm sure all of you have had through your years of experience. And if anyone wants to reach out for some of the people that might be in my network to help them in their unique spaces, I'd be perfectly happy to do that. And thank you all for your vote. I appreciate that. And I couldn't do it without my team. So I have to say thank them for hanging in with me as we go through our continued startup mode.
Terrific. Thank you, Walter. So thank you again, everyone, for attending the HealthTech Startup Awards, and a big congratulations to our winner. This event is hosted by the HealthTech Networking Club. For more information on the invitation-only networking club that connects startups, investors, healthcare providers, and other key players in the health tech industry, please visit the Bene Studio website, benestudio.co. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and please join us next month on March 25th for our next Rapid Conf. So to our networking club members, please feel free to keep networking with each other on Slack. Have a great day, and hopefully we'll see you on March 25th. Thank you, everyone.